Making sure we're, yep, cool. All right. So what we're talking about today is Audient busing and routing. And a couple of words we need to talk about is zeroing out and normaling the board. And this is something that I did mention to you a little bit about yesterday when we were in class in the Audient room itself, but I didn't really push it on you quite yet. But it's really important that you zero out the board. And zero out the board means returning the gear settings back to their start positions. So whenever we're in a room at school or in a studio, you always want to leave it how you found it. So basically there's a certain way that we have the board set up that's going to be what we call zeroing out. And so all the settings are in like a default position, like kind of a good starting position. And it's expected that before you leave the room, you zero out the board. So you put everything back to their start positions. There's another word that's really important that we're going to be talking about today a lot. It's called normal. And when you normal something, that means that you're setting it up how the gear is set up before you do any patching or before you change any things. So for example, we have a reverb unit at school, what is it, the Alesis MIDI verb. And the MIDI verb, the external reverb, there's a couple different ways you can set it up in that room. The way we have it set up, that's what the normal position is. So you don't have to use any patch cables or anything like that in order to use the reverb at SAE, but in order to do that, you have to know how it is normaled. So that's what we call the normal position. That's just the basic position before you kind of change any settings or anything like that. It's called normal. So those are the two big words for today: zero out and normal, how everything is set up. All right, so let's just go over this reverb in Pro Tools. And this is something that we haven't really talked about yet. And the reason why we're talking about this is because I want to show you how it works in Pro Tools and also how it's going to work in on the Audient board. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to put my headphones on here. Turn my monitor down. Let's move that cable out of the way. There we go. Headphones, turn those up. And what we're going to do here is I'm just going to pull up this Pro Tools session. I'm going to pull up my lab session from the other day. This is the one y'all have been working on in class. And I got to say, I'm pretty excited that a lot of you are kind of starting to learn how to use it and getting good with it. And so a lot of people did pretty good on Lab 1. And I helped out a few people to help them do better with it. But what we're doing here is this in Pro Tools is I'm just going to use Lab 1. I'm going to go over here to Recent, and we're going to go to Lab 1 and 2, which actually ended up not being Lab 2, it's just Lab 1. Why are we missing files? Because I don't have that. That's fine. I don't have that hard drive connected up to my computer right now. That's fine. Don't need to use it anyway. All right, so there we go. So here's this.
Yo, my name is Tony.
Okay, so we're not going to listen to my voice today. I'm just going to go ahead and turn those off. Let's make those inactive. And yeah, I'm just going to make all these inactive, hide them. Let's also hide them as well. So we're not seeing them, we're not listening to them. What's up, Smalls? How you doing, man? Let me just go ahead and put you over here. There you go, boom. All right. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so I got this over here. So I'm gonna grab this this drum loop here. And let's send that drum to a reverb real quick. Now, this is something we haven't talked about yet in class, and usually we do have a point where we get to this kind of before we talk about the Audient, but because of everything kind of being all over the place right now, schedule-wise, we haven't gotten there. So what I'm gonna do is, let's say I wanna take this drum and send it to a reverb. Now, I can put a reverb directly on the drum, just like go over here to my inserts and put a reverb directly on the drum, and I'm gonna use Deverb because that's the one that comes with Pro Tools. So I can go over here and and if I put this up like this, I adjust my dry wet, I can make it sound like it's in a little small room. I can make it sound like it's in a church. Make it sound like it's in a hall or a plate. Let me go ahead and I'm gonna loop this part. There we go. And we have a couple of different rooms in here. Okay, so I have these different reverb types in here, and as you can hear, it sounds fine. There's nothing really wrong with it here. What's up, Swift? How you doing, man? There's nothing really wrong with how it sounds right now. You could totally do this if you just had one instrument in your track, no problem at all. But what about this breakbeat over here? Let's listen to the breakbeat. Turn that up so you can hear it better. Okay, so that breakbeat, okay, so we got that breakbeat, and the breakbeat doesn't have a reverb on it right now. Just our drum loop has a reverb on it. So let's go ahead and take this reverb and put it on the drum, on the breakbeat as well. So I'm just gonna hold down Option and drag it over, and it's gonna copy it. Oh wait, it's not, it's stereo to mono, so I'm just gonna not drag and copy it over. I'm gonna just go ahead and grab the same reverb. And there we go. So I got my same reverb here. I'm just going to go ahead and let's open up both of these reverbs. And now this is where things start to get a little bit tricky, because now I've got the one reverb on one, the other reverb on the other. So what if I want the same reverb on both of them? So I'm going to have to open these up and go ahead and make some adjustments here. Put it in small mode and put it to 246. So I have to copy this in, 246 to 246. 246 millisecond. I don't know what to put in there for that. So let's put just bring it down here like this. There we go, 248. That's pretty close. And put that like that. Set that up to that. And put my high. Okay, there we go. Good. So now they should sound. The reverb should sound the same on both of them. So if I can hear the reverb on that, or here's my reverb on this one. Set this up like this. So I've got a reverb on each one, and it's basically the same reverb. I mean, obviously it sounds a little bit different, but it's the same reverb sound. You can kind of hear that. But now what if I say, you know what, my drum loop, I want to put that inside of a plate, and I listen to that, and I say, yeah, that's dope. I like that a lot. And I want to keep it inside this plate, but I also want to put my other one inside the plate. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to go over here and click on plate, and then make sure all the settings are the same. Let me see down here. Let's add a pre-delay. High filter cut. Let's make it a small plate and make it sound like this much. Okay. Cool, so I got that there. Let's make it do the same thing with this other one here. So I got this, so now I have to go through, and every time I want a reverb, if I want the same kind of reverb to make it sound like they're in the same kind of room, I have to go through here and change all my settings for each one. And that is a super pain. This is ridiculous. I don't even know why let me go ahead and do this, and then move this over here like this. Okay, boom. There we go, right. So Rilla says, if you copy the plugin over to another track, doesn't it copy with the setting you had on it? Yeah, it can, absolutely. But the problem is, in Pro Tools, I cannot copy a multi-channel plugin onto a mono plugin. I can't copy. See, this one is stereo right here. This drum loop is stereo, and the breakbeat is mono, and I cannot copy the one to the other. It's impossible to do that in Pro Tools. So I can't copy it over in Pro Tools. Now in Logic or Ableton Live, you could totally copy it, but I'm just using 2 tracks as an example. What if I had 10 tracks of drums? Do I really, every time I make an adjustment to my plugin, do I really want to sit there and copy it over 10 times? Do you? Do you want to do that? If you do want to do that, and you think that I should be doing that, then you can come over and be my assistant, and I won't pay you. I'll just let you do that for me all the time. How about that? Right? So to me, that does not sound super fun at all. I do not like that idea. I just think it sounds dumb. So let's do this the smart way. That's the dumb way to do it. This is the way I see a lot of people do it. I've even seen professional people do it like this, and it's okay, fine, great. You can get it done and it works like that, but you're really just adding so much work onto yourself. So one of the reasons why you come to SAE and why you're watching me teach and listening to me and you know, having me as a teacher is because you want to learn the best ways to do things, not just the ways that people who don't know what they're doing do things. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to use send effects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new aux channel in here, and I'm going to make it a stereo aux channel, and I'm going to call this one drum reverb. So I'm going to go over here. It's called drum reverb here. Let me just change that so it's not all capital. Boom, there we go. Regan, what is up? Hold on, let's just get Regan in here real quick. There we go. Nice. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We got this drum reverb here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Command and click on the solo button so it is in solo safe mode. Solo safe mode means that if I solo something out, it's just going to continue to play the audio through here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a reverb on the aux track here. And I'm just going to use the same reverb I've been using, and the reason why I'm using that reverb is because it comes with Pro Tools and it's a decent enough reverb. Now I'm going to set up my bus send, the input on this aux channel. I'm going to set up the bus input 1 and 2. Boom. So now see how it says IO here? On top is the input, on the bottom is the output. And it's going to say bus 1 and 2 on the input. Now anything that I want to send to that bus, I'm going to put it here in my sends right here. See how that says sends, A through E? Well, I'm going to take this and I'm going to send it over to this bus 1 and 2. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to send it to bus 1 and 2, like that, boom. Now whenever you do that, you're going to see a little fader pops up here, and that fader is how much I'm sending over to this bus 1 and 2. So solo out my drums, and I'm going to watch what happens. I'm going to pull this over here so we can see it. Actually, let's put it all like right there. Okay, like this. Okay, so let me put this in my instrument group as well, actually. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it over. I've got this send here. There's my track. Here's my send for that track. I'm just going to pull it up, and you're going to start to hear that reverb. Awesome. So I've got my reverb on there. You can hear that reverb. Now, if I want to actually, here, let's just close the reverb down for a second. Now, if I want to add my breakbeat into that whole equation, I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to do bus 1 and 2 here. And when I do that, you see that this fader just changed. If I click on it, it pulls up my other fader, and I can switch between my faders like this. There's also another easier way to do that, which I'll show you another time. But for now, let's just use these faders. And what I'm going to do is this breakbeat, push that button, turn this fader up on the breakbeat, and it's going to send it over to the same reverb. Which is dope. Now if I've got my I can balance between these two different drum loops here. I've got my drum loop and my breakbeat, and all I have to do is click on one or the other, or I can hold down Shift to see both of them at the same time. It's just going to stick it up there. So now I can send each one to my reverb over here and balance my reverbs out. So this one here, my breakbeat one here on the right hand side, it's not sending any reverb to the reverb. It's not sending any signal to the reverb. So it's completely dry. That's my breakbeat. It's completely dry. If I turn this up, there we go. Let's do the same thing with my percussion. Let's solo out my percussion. There's my percussion, completely dry right now. What I'm going to do is let me just close these out real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and send it to the bus 1 and 2 as well. Bus 1 and 2, remember, is my reverb. And now as I turn this fader up that just popped up, because it's for this bus 1 and 2 here, as I turn this fader up, we're going to hear that reverb come in. And that's how you set up your reverb in Pro Tools. Now, in reality, you're going to be learning about this. I'm going to stop right there because you're going to be learning about this in a lot of detail next week. There's a whole lesson about this stuff next week that Michael John's going to be teaching you while I'm gone. But now you've got a good head start on it. You've got a good head start watching me teach it to you. And it'll be in this recording for today. But here, let's just check this out. If I wanted these drums to sound like they're a little bit closer to me or further away, turn the volume down here. Let's put these up. I don't want those drums to have so much reverb on them. There we go. So I'm going to turn down that reverb send. And that's how we can do reverb sends in Pro Tools. And this is the way you should always do things like reverbs and delays. And I know you learned about this in Mod 1 a little bit, send effects, time-based effects and stuff like that. But this is explaining a little bit more why you should do it. And why we should even do it these days when we have everything digital. Because like Rilla said, we could just copy and paste it over, but in Pro Tools you actually can't do that. And even if you could, would you really want to sit there and do that 10 times or more in a set? And there's like lots of times, if I'm working like with an orchestra, I'm going to have my violins, I'm going to have my violas, I'm going to have my cellos, I'm going to have my double basses, I'm going to have my French horns, my trumpets, my trombones, my tubas, my clarinets, my flutes, all those things. That's 10 instruments right there. And that's not even all the instruments in an orchestra. And all those instruments need to be sent to reverb. So what if I just decide later, oh, I don't like that reverb. I have to change it for all 10 of those instruments? No, that's such a waste of time. It's so stupid to work like that. Don't work like that. I don't know how many times I go over this stuff with students and then later on I come back and I see them putting reverbs on stuff. I will take massive points off on your project if I find you doing this. And I'm going to remind you about this when you're like, why are you taking points off for doing reverbs? I've got a reverb in there. Yeah, but you're not using it right. If you're using a reverb as an insert effect, I'm taking points off. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, actually not sorry. So just keep it in mind. If you have a reverb or a delay, make sure you put it on a send and an aux track, okay? So it's got to be using, it's what we call send effects. That's what we're doing here. So that's how that works in Pro Tools, and that's actually in the notes right here. So here's a different way to just show it without all the extra stuff in there. If I have my audio, the main output of my audio is going to my main 1 and 2, the master output here. And what I can do is I send from bus 1 and 2 over to my aux channel, which has my reverb on it. So this is my reverb track right here. This is my audio track right here. And I've got the send here. So this is, remember, this is the same as the aux send on the Mackie, which you didn't really put your hands on, so you don't really know it as well as you would have. But it's got like a little knob on it, and you turn it up to send the signal more to the reverb. And that's what's going on here in Pro Tools. If I click on one of these, it pulls up this extra little fader here that just kind of lives on top of stuff. I can put it over here on the right. If I hold down Shift, I can pull up the fader like this. Let me just put them over like this. And if I hold down Shift again and I click it, there we go. So now I've got my 3 send amounts over here and I've got all these things. Now in this scenario, if I play everything, cool. And now we can hear there's like a little bit of reverb on these if I wanted more. Now the really cool thing about this is if I turn down my breakbeat, my percussion loop, and I turn up the reverb, it's going to give it a 3D space. And that's what reverb is really doing. Reverb, what it does, the whole reason why we use reverb, is to put things into a space, into the world. And so now this breakbeat and this percussion loop sounds like it's a little bit further away. I've got headphones on. You probably have headphones on. So it's not going to sound as 3D as if you're listening to it on speakers, but you do get the point. It sounds a lot different than this. That sounds like the breakbeat is right there with you with the drum beat, and it's kind of up there. But down here, Kind of like tickling our ears back there. Filling out the sound, which is really nice. That's what we want to be doing, is filling out that sound. All right, so how this would work on the Mackie 1604, and you did learn about this in Mod 1, is if we have our vocal and our snare drum here, what we would do is we'd send it over to the aux out, aux number 1, and then the reverb, the aux number 1 sends to the reverb. We connect it up to the input on the reverb, and the output of the reverb comes back to our aux return. So the aux out is getting sent. This is our same as this one over here. See this little knob here, the aux send mount? That's right there. And it's the same as this send amount here in Pro Tools. So this is how much. So if I turn this up, let's go ahead and solo this out one more time. There's no reverb because I've turned my send amount all the way down. If I turn my send amount all the way up, now we're hearing more reverb. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Staffo, what is up? How you doing? All right. So that's how that works. And so you've got two places where you're adjusting actually you've got three places where you're adjusting that level of that reverb, or how we hear the level. One is our master aux outs. The master aux outs, you need to have those turned up, and let's turn them up to like 12 or 1 o'clock or something like that, and just leave them there. Usually you don't have to touch them too much. Then we have our aux send amount for each individual track. That's so I can turn it up more for this track and less for this track. And then we have our aux return, which is the same thing as our aux channel in Pro Tools. That's our return track right there. So if I've got my reverb going on, there's my reverb, and I want to turn it down, I can also turn down the return of the reverb like that. But what's that going to do? That's actually going to turn the reverb down for all three of my percussion sounds here. It's just turning my reverb down in general. Okay. All right. Just turning that reverb down in general. And we may want to do that, we may not want to do that, but usually you just put your aux channel there, or your aux return here, and just leave it alone as well. You usually don't touch that. Okay. So at SAE, the way that this is set up is it's normal. Our MIDI verb is normal to auxes 1 and 2, and it normals back into stereo input number 1. Remember, on Monday, we talked about there are 4 stereo inputs. And what's the big difference between the stereo input and one of the channels? Well, the main difference is that they do not have EQs on them. There's no EQs on the stereo input. So this means that we can't EQ this reverb. We can just let it play. We can hear it, we can turn it up, we can turn it down, we can record it into the computer using the groups. But we can't actually EQ it, and that's fine for now. We're not going to worry about that too much. So how do we send a sound to reverb at SAE? Well, in Pro Tools, what we just showed you to do is we pull up an aux channel, we put the reverb on an aux channel, then we set up a bus send, and we turn up the send level. That's actually not super difficult to do. At SAE, it's also not super difficult to do, but there is one extra step, and that is the aux masters. You got to make sure those are turned up. So first of all, step number 1 is we turn up aux sends 1 and 2 on the channel you want to send to the reverb. Number 2 is you turn up the aux masters for 1 and 2, or whichever aux sends you're using. And then number 3 is on stereo input number 1, you push that mix button. And number 4, step number 4, on stereo input number 1, you turn up the level. And now we should be hearing reverb. There's no patching required. We don't have to get too complicated with stuff. We don't have to like push, patch in any cables or do anything like that. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. The first time you do it, it's going to be tricky. Now, one thing that I kind of didn't push yesterday, but I will start pushing it tomorrow, is that when you go into that Audient room, you need to have your notes in there with you, because there's zero chance you're going to know what you're doing without your notes. You're not going to know it. You're not good enough yet. You need to have your notes. You need to have, or my notes. You need to have some notes in there with you. Always make sure you take the notes in there. If you don't have the notes in there, you're just kind of spinning your wheels, I think. So make sure you take these notes in there. And if you follow these step by step, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to be good to go. It's actually, you're going to hear it. Just make sure when you turn these up, the aux sends 1 and 2 and the aux masters, make sure you turn them up to like 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. So they're like this, or they're like this at 1 o'clock, whatever way 1 o'clock is for you. Just make sure you've got that set up like that. All right, so next we're going to talk about here are the inserts. We kind of mentioned about this before on Monday, but I didn't really take much time to really talk about them too much. But basically it's like this. I'm a little dude and I've got a microphone, and my microphone is plugged into channel 1 on my console. And I'm listening to it and I think that sounds really good, but I really want to have a compressor on my voice. I want my voice to be compressed. So my board doesn't have a compressor in it. I do have compressor in Pro Tools, but I don't want to use the compressor in Pro Tools. I want to use a hardware compressor in the studio. So what do? I have 2 cables that are going to go to connect to my compressor, and they're going to go out of my send and returns on the inserts on each channel. So each channel looks like this over here. Remember, on the back, on top, we have a send and we have a return. The send cable is connected to the input. You're sending it out of the console, and it's going into the compressor. And then it goes, the signal gets compressed, and it goes out of the compressor, and it gets returned. It returns into the console. So normally, you're not going to have to actually connect these cables. You're not going to connect these cables unless you're actually connecting up a studio yourself. But you still have to know how this stuff works, because at some point in time, you might actually have your own console where you need to learn how to set it. You need to know how to set it up. So people often get confused about the send and return and the inputs and the outputs and all that stuff. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you a little story about how to remember that. So over here it says Audient inserts, and this is not just for the Audient, it's also for the SSL or the Neve or the O2R or Mackie or whatever. So send sends the signal out from the console, and return returns the signal into the console. The send is connected to the device's inputs, and the return is connected to the device's return or output. So here's how this works. Let me tell you a little story. You come over to my place, we're working on some music, we're making beats, and I'm like, you know what? I need a tall, cool glass of milk. I like milk. I drink oat milk. But I want a glass of milk. I don't have any milk here right now, so why don't you go to the store and get me some milk? And you're like, cool, Tony. We are in Sonny. We are in 19 Audient busing and routing. That's the PDF we are in right now. 19 Audient busing routing. So you say to me, Tony, I will go get you some milk. So you go out of my house and you go into the store and you buy the milk. And then you go out of the store and you return back to my house. That's how that works. I send you out of my house. I send you out. You go into the store. You go out of the store and you return back to my house, milk in hand, nice and luscious, drinkable milk that tastes delicious. That's made from who's Tommy? All right. So, yep. So I send you out and you return back in. So the inserts, so there's your little story to help you, hopefully you can help you remember that. Just remember that whenever you're thinking about like, wait, send is input or output or what, just remember my milk story. I send you out to get milk and you return back in with the milk. Okay, so the inserts can be applied to the input or monitor path. The input path, the affected signal will be recorded on the multi-track recorder. And on the monitor path, the affected signal will not be recorded on the multi-track recorder. And you use the patch bay and push the correct insert button to assign the insert. So basically, if we look at, there was a thing in here. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah. Let's just look at this introduction real quick. I just want to show you one of these pictures in here. Yep, right here. So you see this where it says insert in and insert in number 3 and 7. So the tape insert in here, it says right here, this is you push this button to engage that insert. So if and this is on the monitor path. So if I have a compressor and I want to compress the signal, I have to make sure that I have everything plugged in correctly. We're going to use patch cables for inserts, and then I'm going to push this insert button. If you don't push the insert button, nothing's going to happen. If you want to have the insert be on the monitor path, you can push it on the tape here. If you want to have it be on the input path, it's going to be on the mic line path here. Now the thing is that the mic line path is going to be recorded into the multi-track machine. The monitor path here, the tape path here, is going to be after you've recorded it. So this is going to be recorded into the 2-track stereo bounce. It's going to be recorded in your final bounce, but it's not going to be recorded onto the individual track. So just keep that in mind. All right, cool. All right, now let's talk about busing. And I know a few of you actually got into busing stuff yesterday, which was kind of funny because everybody tried to do busing after that because the people were showing it to the next people. But it's not something we need to talk about right now because I think it's a few people were like, what is this even for? Why are we doing this? And the answer is it does have a use, but let's not worry about it quite yet. I mean, we didn't need to worry about it yesterday. Today is the day to talk about it. And busing, what it means basically is, let me just show you in my Pro Tools example here. I've got all my drums like this. And so this is my drums. And I'm going to go ahead and move the drum reverb over here next to my drums. And I'm going to go ahead and put another aux channel in here. I'm going to call this in my drum group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my buses the same way as I did for my aux. Except I'm going to use a different bus number here. I'm going to use bus 3 and 4. I'm going to go ahead and hold down Command and click the S button for solo safe. And what I'm going to do is all of my drums here, I'm going to send them over to this drum group, but I'm not going to use my sends. The sends here, they split the signal into another signal. I don't want to split the signal. I want to take the entire signal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to where my output is. See if I just mouse over, it says Audio Output Path Selector. So I'm going to go to bus 3 and 4 because it's the same number as this one right here. I'm going to do it for all 3 of these, bus 3 and 4. Boom, same one. And then bus 3 and 4. Boom. And then Joe says, can you change the colors of the mix channels and make all the drums one color and all the guitars another? Yes, absolutely, you can. Yep. And I'll show you that in just a second. So what I'm gonna do is with my drums, and same thing with my same thing with my drum reverb. I'm gonna send that to my drum group as well. Bus 3 and 4. Boom. Now my drum group, I'm going to send that over to my instrument group, which is the same thing. It's just I just gave it a different name, like that. There we go. And now watch what happens. Everything is going through my drum group aux channel here, and if I turn it down, I'm turning down all my drums at the same time, which is great. So if my drums as a whole is too loud, I can just turn it down right here. And there we go. So I can turn this down right here, turn it up. But my point is that everything here stays the same in the mix. The mix of the drums still stays the same, but now I can control it with just one fader right here. Which is pretty darn cool. It's really dope. Okay. All the signals are now going into here right here, and then it's getting mixed with everything else. That's what busing does for us. That's how we can use our buses here. So what we're going to do is, let's say on our Audient, and this is an Audient 4816. It's not the 8024. It's a smaller one. But it's basically this. It's the same concepts, and I just used this picture because it was a smaller picture, but we could see it better. So I've got all my drums here. I want to subgroup these drums to just these two faders over here. So I can just grab those two faders and pull all my drums up and down. Well, that's what we call subgroup mixing. And the reason why we do it is if we have a bunch of horns and a bunch of background vocals, a bunch of drums, a bunch of vocals, guitars, basses, things like that, and I want to have them all going to different sections, well then what I can, if I want to have them all being easy to control, like I've got 3 horns, 3 background vocals, all this stuff, a bunch of drums. This is a live setup. And if I have like 5 different drum mics or 6 different drum mics, and I've got them set so the mix sounds good, I would have to keep them in relation to each other with the 5 different mics and stuff. But if I have them bust together, I can just use 2 faders. And I can just put 2 fingers on it and move that up and down right there. So the horns, background vocals, drums, vocals, guitar, bass, all that stuff there. Move that around. So what I want to do here is let's just take a look at this. This is how to send signal to the buses on the Audient. Okay, and it's actually pretty easy to do. It just means that you have to push a couple of buttons that you hadn't pushed before. So on the routing matrix, first of all, we're going to press this long fader button to get the signal from our long fader. The long fader is the monitor path on that Audient. And number 2, we're going to go to the routing matrix and press the numbers for the buses you want to send to, in this case 1 and 2. Step number 3 here, routing matrix, press the pan button. And then steps 4 through 6 on the buses, press the mix button, pan left and right, and then turn up the levels. So step number 4 is press the mix button. Step number 5 is pan left and right. And number 6 is turn up the levels, okay? So I condensed it down here, but I hope you can understand what that is saying right there. So what we're doing is on the routing matrix, we're gonna push that long fader button. And the routing matrix, remember the routing matrix is up at the top. It's this part up here. Up at the top of the console. That's the routing matrix. And it looks a little bit different on here than it does on the one at school because this is a slightly smaller desk. Right, so we got the routing matrix, press the numbers for the buses you want to send to, and then, so we press them 1 and 2, and then we go over to 1 and 2. We're gonna press the mix button. We're going to pan them left and right here, full left and right, and then we're gonna turn up the faders down here. And that's how you'd set that up. It's as easy as that. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's do something here with these. This here. There was something I wanted to show you. Now I can't remember what it was. The horns, background vocals, drums, vocals, guitar, bass, subgroup, mix. Can't remember what it was that I wanted to show you. Do you always have to pan them left and right? Yes. You should always pan your buses left and right over here. And the reason why you should always pan them left and right is because if you're not panning them left and right, then you're probably just want to use them as mono. So you would just send it to number 1 instead of number 1 and 2. The only reason why we're sending it to 2 channels is because we want to pan them left and right. If you don't want to pan them left and right, like let's say you have a bass guitar and you have a bass DI box with the dry signal and you're sending it to an amplifier, so the amp and the dry signal of your bass. And sometimes you do want to mix those together to get a different sound. Well, if you have a bass like that, you don't need to pan the DI signal left and the amp signal right. You don't need to set up stuff like that. You can just have everything be mono. So in the case of like a bass guitar or something, you wouldn't pan it left and right, but you would not send it to 2 different channels here. You would just send it to 1 channel. It would be like channel 3. You would just send it to that channel there. And so you wouldn't send it to multiple buses. You would just have it be on 1 bus. So the answer is, do you always have to pan them left and right? Yes, if you have 2. If you're sending them to 2 things, you have to pan them left and right, for sure. Yeah. If you're only sending it to 1 thing, then no, don't pan it left and right. All right, I do want to talk about the headphone mix. The headphone mix, and I'm going to show you how to set that up tomorrow in the Audient. It's an individual mix for different musicians in the studio. So let's say, for example, I've got a vocalist, a guitar, a bass, and a drummer. I've got 4 people, and they all have headphones, and some of them want to hear the sound one way, and some of them want to hear the sound a different way. So for example, if I'm listening in my studio, I'm the engineer, and I've got my control room, I might want to hear a nice mix of everything. But my vocalist maybe wants to hear more vocals when they're singing in their headphones. They want to hear it louder in their headphones for them so they can be comfortable. So we could set it up like that, and different headphones can have a different headphone mix. It can be a different mix of instruments in different headphones. So the vocalist, let's say, for example, the vocalist wants lots of vocals, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of bass, and a little bit of drums. Whereas the guitar player wants lots of guitar, lots of drums, medium bass, and a little bit of vocals. Maybe the vocalist and the guitar player are fighting right now. Then the bass player wants lots of bass and drums, medium guitar, and very little vocals. Oh, the bass player's on the side of the guitar player. And the drummer only wants bass and drums, no guitars, and no vocals. That drummer just hates everybody. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to make sure that our aux sends are set to Prefader mode, and that's a mode in here. Check this out. If I go into Pro Tools, see this little button right here? It says Pre. That's Prefader mode. Now what this means is that if I adjust my fader over here, set up like this. If I adjust my fader on my drum, the dry signal, it doesn't affect this reverb signal at all. So if I turn my reverb signal down, here's our dry drums. If I make my drums louder, whatever. Here, I'm gonna turn this reverb up. So there's my reverb sound. If I turn my dry signal down, notice that we are still hearing the reverb on the drums. That's because this is set for pre-fader right here. But if I set it for post-fader, which is turning off, I hit play, we're not going to hear anything. The reason we don't hear anything is because this fader is down. So if I turn this fader up, we're going to hear that reverb sound as well as the dry sound. But the signal is to the send is coming after the fader. It's after this fader here. It's coming over here. So if I turn the fader down, no more signal is being sent over here to this send. But if I set it to pre, the signal is going to come here before the fader. So listen to what happens. I'm literally just turning down my dry signal, and so all I've got is this wet signal over here. So they do very different things. The reason why we usually use pre-fader is because if we're doing a headphone mix, we want to be able to adjust the mix in the control room for ourselves, but so it does not affect what they're hearing in the headphones. So we're going to use these buses to send different amounts of signal out to the headphones to make like a mix for our musicians. But if we want to adjust them independently of our faders, that's when we use pre-fader metering or pre-fader sends. So just like a little example of that over here is this like water kind of example here. If I have a faucet, I've got like a water pipe, and the water pipe's dumping water into a bowl. And I say, you know what, I want water to dump into another bowl at the same time. I've got a faucet. This faucet here adjusts how much water is dumping into that bowl. If I turn the faucet, open it up all the way, it's going to dump a lot of water into this bowl very quickly. If I turn the faucet down, it's not going to dump much water into that bowl at all. Well, if I wanted to dump water into another separate bowl, if I put the pipe after the faucet, what's going to happen is I'm now dumping water into 2 bowls. I turn the faucet off on the first one over here. It's also going to stop the water going to this one over here because this water is coming out after this faucet right here. So the faucet controls to both of these pipes outlets, both the pipe outlets. But if I'm taking the water from before my faucet, what you can see here if I adjust this faucet here, it's going to adjust my water outflow into this bowl over here. But this bowl over here is coming out before this faucet. So this faucet should not adjust the water outflow over here at all. They're not connected anymore. And I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps with this whole scenario. So this faucet here in this scenario, in both scenarios, is my fader on my fader in Pro Tools, my fader on my Audient. This faucet over here, this one right here, or in this page here, this one right here, this is my aux send amount, and this is like my reverb. So the second bowl is like my reverb. This setup here is after fader, and this setup here is pre-fader. So what we would use this for is for sending signals to our headphones, and the way this works is this. Our different auxes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, would be sending our signal to our different musicians. So the vocalist would be on aux 1, the guitar player would be on aux 2, the bass player would be on aux 3. Staffo, thanks. I'm glad you like that. And the drums would be on aux 4. Now down here below, channel 1, 2, 3, and 4, the vocals is on channel 1, guitar is on channel 2, bass is on channel 3, and drums is on channel 4. So the faders down here, let me just zoom in here a little bit. The faders here are going to be what's sending what we're hearing in the studio. That's for us. And that's going to be our final mix that we're mixing out to our 2-track or something like that. But it's for us as the engineer. We want the beat to sound good. We want the vocals to sound good. We want it to be like a decent overall mix that sounds good. But maybe the vocalist, as I said before, the vocalist doesn't need a good mix. They need to hear more vocals. So what we're going to do is the vocals go across the top here. So for my vocalist, if I want more vocals, I'm going to turn up the vocal channel here. The number 1. Channel number 1 is my vocal channel. Aux number 1 is going to my vocalist, so I'm going to turn it up here. It's like a matrix. What I'm going to do here is number 2, the guitars. The vocalist doesn't want much guitars, so I'm going to turn down the guitars on channel number 2, aux number 1. Aux number 1, channel 3, I'm going to turn down my bass, and I'm also going to turn down my drums here. Same thing for my guitars over here, aux 2. Vocalist, not much vocals, a lot of guitar, medium bass, a lot of drums. For my bass player, if they want a little bit of vocals, I'm going to turn down the vocals. If they want medium guitar, turn those up, a lot of bass, a lot of drums. And then my drums here, aux 4, turn down no vocals, no guitar, a lot of bass, and a lot of drums. So one more, I think you're going to need to see this a couple times. My advice is watch the video again, because I have to move on. We have to kind of keep going here, but watch the video as many times as you need to. And also make sure you check out the other videos that I've got up that are saying basically the same thing. It's using the same notes, but maybe it's a slightly different, maybe people ask some slightly different questions that might help you out a little bit there. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is this. I want to, let's do the next page of notes, but let's take a little break here because I just want to give you some time to let that digest. We're going to take a 10-minute break because it's been about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and hide this out, and we're going to come back and we're going to go into the multi-track recording here, which is actually number 18, multi-track recording. And this is literally just a list of all the stuff we just kind of talked about and how to do a multi-track recording. And it's just a list. We're just going to walk through this list of stuff, but we're going to do it after the break here. So it's a lot, and I want to make sure y'all can kind of digest things properly. So we're going to go ahead and go here, stop.